Mr. Myers, it's a pleasure, sir.
Good morning. You guys are a little rough on Mike Lombardi, huh?
I can't stand him.
None of us can.
He's such.
It's awful.
He's awful, and it's not that he just kisses Belichick's ass. It's that he does it in such a condescending way where he feels bad and he's taking it out on the person he's talking to.
Yeah, Mike has been, let's say, attached to Bill back from the Cleveland days, and he's probably the happiest guy in football that Bill took this job because now he's back. It's not the NFL, but it's the ACC. Not quite as good, but.
No, not quite.
No, and we'll get to all the Belichick and Jet stuff. But Gary, just real quick on Mike Lombardi, is he qualified? Does he have the resume and everything needed for that job that he's going to do with Belichick at UNC?
Well, I mean, who knows who's qualified? These are all new jobs.
Yeah.
Right. GM of a college football team. If you had mentioned that 2 years ago, you go, "What the heck are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And Mike, let's just say, Mike, in talking to him over the years, can be a pretty good self-promoter, as you guys know, and can sell the product. And if the idea is that he's going to be in charge of this, the quote-unquote salary cap at UNC and help Bill with the recruiting and the scouting of which players he wants to recruit. I mean, he's got experience doing this at the NFL level. Whether it translates to college, I don't know how we really know about any of these guys. I mean, Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN is now the general manager of St. Bonaventure basketball. His qualifications are he was the best NBA reporter. Does that translate to being the GM of a college basketball team? Well, I guess we're going to find out because these are all new jobs. We don't know who's qualified for what.
Yeah, I don't doubt his qualifications for the job, and Belichick has now valued friendship, and that's not even a negative to him, but it is for the teams that he's with. He valued his friendship with Patricia and Judge over any kind of, real world qualifications they had for jobs that he gave them. That's not it. It's just, first of all, to be honest with you, Gary, I just cannot stand Mike Lombardi, and
you really have a hard time hiding that. So
well,
I wasn't sure
for my profession, it's probably best not to hide things during the course of these hours. It's kind of I gotta try to entertain, but But I mean, I know for a fact that radio shows will have him on almost as they know what he's going to do, and they will have him on just to make fun of him for it. But then he protests like he's the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
But it's all a gag against him that he's unaware of, if you understand what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, the thing about Mike, and I haven't talked to him for a long time, but just, hearing him on podcasts and things that he put on social media when he's being very critical of different programs around the NFL, and you think about how many jobs he had and how many jobs he lost, but now he's sitting back and telling people the right way to do things. I do have somewhat of a problem with that, which, I probably share that opinion with you, that he kind of invents some, he kind of comes across sometimes as if he invented the game, when obviously he really didn't.
No, that's very true. All right, Gary. So what are you hearing about Belichick in the sincerity of his interest in the Jets job?
Well, first of all, I really think this the epitome of desperation of a guy who wanted back into the NFL, who wants to break Don Shula's record. He didn't like Don Shula for the things that he said. Back in 2007, when the Patriots were about 8 or 9 and 0, and I called Don Shula when I was working at the Daily News, and I said, what do you think about the Patriots making a run at the undefeated season and, the whole Spygate thing? And that's when he said that it deserved an asterisk. That was the first time in that interview with me that Shula was really critical.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. Yeah, that's great.
He went to call him Belichick.
Yep.
So you know that Belichick wanted to break Shula's record in the worst way, just like he wanted to go 19 and 0 in 07 to do something that Shula never did. And so, listen, if anybody who thinks Belichick would rather have gone to North Carolina than any of the, let's call it the 31 teams, because he wasn't going back to New England, that he'd rather have a job at Carolina than any of the 31 NFL teams that he possibly could have gone to. I mean, they're just fooling themselves. Plus, I'm really convinced that he wanted to try to win a Super Bowl without Brady, because the whole argument of Brady versus Belichick got, tilted so much towards Brady after he won a Super Bowl in Tampa. Now, I don't think that really should have anything to do with judging who gets the credit for the 20 years they were together in New England. But I think the public perception is now that it was all Brady. So as far as the Jets are concerned, listen, I don't know whether he spoke directly to Woody Johnson or whether he had an intermediary do it or whether he spoke to an intermediary of Woody Johnson to get the message to him. But there's no question there was contact of some sort in which he expressed his interest in the Jets job, which, I mean, I guess the clean way of saying this is, boy, the guy's got some chutzpah
Yeah.
to do that, right?
Right.
After he went to what he did to the Jets in 2000. Now, I suggested two things. One, that Woody Johnson should have hired him and fired him after 24 hours.
I said the same thing. He should have brought him in. He should have flown him in, sat him down, had him do a 6-hour presentation, and then just flipped him off and walked out of the room.
Absolutely. I mean, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
The other thing, Carolina's playing in the Fenway Bowl, and I know that Bill's not going to be coaching in that, but what a triumphant return I envision a year from now.
Yeah.
North Carolina playing in the Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Stadium. Bill back in New York, coaching Carolina in the prestigious Pinstripe Bowl against Purdue. I mean, how great would that be?
It really, I mean, it's got to be the way he drew it up in his head.
Yeah. He's got it on his vision board somewhere, I'm sure.
Can I ask you this? And I'm a Jet fan, but I find this story interesting for a million reasons. But
I'm sorry about that.
yeah, I know. It's well, apologize to my son. He's the one who's going to have to carry it on. But the what's his deal with Woody Johnson? Like, what is his problem with Woody Johnson? I've never really completely understood it.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat. Well, let me just say this: when Bill resigned in January of 2000 as the Jets coach of the HC of the NYJ, which has become kind of a running gag here in New York, Woody didn't yet own the team.
Right.
It was Woody against Charles Dolan. Those were the two finalists to buy the team, and the winner hadn't been decided yet. And it didn't come for another 2-3 weeks. So I think the uncertainty of who he was going to be working for probably factored into it. But the reason he hates Woody is because just the back and forth, and then the whole Spygate thing, even though that was really Mangini, Woody was attached to it. And I'm sure there's like behind the scenes bad blood that we are not necessarily aware of that happened between the Jets and the Patriots during that period of time, and then the Deion Branch thing where the Patriots accused the Jets of tampering, and all kinds of stuff that, the animosity between the two organizations was real, and Bill's hatred of the Jets is real, and his dislike / hatred of Woody Johnson is real because I've had conversations with Bill about that, and. I even said to him, Bill, you never worked for him. What's up with that? And, he just made one of those Belichick faces. And, so I know it's legit. I think it's over the top. And in this case, guys, it cost him any chance he had to get the Jets job. Because I think if you asked, if all this stuff didn't happen with Bill and Woody and turning his back on the Jets 24 years ago, and just say he just left under the right circumstances all those years ago, he would have had a chance to come back because the Jets need the credibility that Belichick would have brought to the organization that right now their fans have just had it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers this year was the owner, coach, and general manager, and we've seen how that worked out. And so bringing in a guy like Belichick with a strong personnel guy whose name would not have been Mike Lombardi would have been greeted very warmly by Jets fans, but he blew it because of all the things that have happened over the years.
Right. And it is very interesting with everything that he said that he did, indeed express interest in the Jets job despite all of that, and then claims that, he will play it later, but he claimed yesterday that there was interest in the NFL, but he took the North Carolina job anyway.
I want to throw one thing at you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Um, there's been a lot of stuff coming. Now, I've thought for over a year that Dallas was the place for Bill. I thought that Jerry Jones would fire McCarthy after last season and hired Bill. And then you've been hearing things recently that that McCarthy might be coming back to Dallas. I think the fact that Belichick took the job in North Carolina is the strongest sign that McCarthy will be returning as the Cowboys coach, because I still think that was the perfect match between Jerry and Belichick. That Jerry's about 10 years older than him. They were both desperate to win a Super Bowl. It's been a quarter of a century since Jerry has even been to an NFC Championship game, which was the same year he won his last Super Bowl. And we know, everybody knows that Belichick was desperate to win another Super Bowl to prove he can win without Brady. And he was desperate to be remembered as the winningest coach in NFL history. And I thought that Jerry and Belichick were kind of at the same point in their lives, their football lives, where they would do anything to win. But the fact that Belichick took the job in North Carolina, and I could wind up being wrong about this, but I think that's the strongest sign yet that McCarthy will be back in Dallas.
The Prescott certainly campaigned for him, so they've had to deal with that.
And Michael Parsons too.
Yeah. All right. Well, Gary Myers, look. Oh, go ahead. You guys on?
I think we're going to have to talk to you again closer to when the book comes out, because he said something a few minutes ago when you're mentioning the Brady Belichick debate and how what Brady did in Tampa shouldn't be factored into the calculus. And I'm fascinated as to hear why not, because I always thought part of the argument was, well, one of them couldn't have done it without the other, but then one did. So
well, if I can just say that. To me, it's based on the 20 years in New England, not what happened before, not what happened after. And although I think ultimately, it's not really a spoiler alert, my ultimate conclusion in the book will be that it was more Brady than Belichick, for sure. I think people are diminishing what Bill did early on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the one who drafted him.
Yeah.
And he's the one who had the balls to start him and keep him as the starter.
And Brady was on board with everything that Bill was selling in those first 5, 6, 7 years. Would he have been the same quarterback with, say, Pete Carroll as his head coach?
Right.
Well, I mean, what would have happened if Tom wound up in Cleveland or I was going to say Houston, but they weren't around in 2000. Or just Chicago, which has been a burial ground for quarterbacks. You name it. Jacksonville, Carolina. Would Tom had even won one Super Bowl. He wound up in a perfect spot. Now he ran with it, and did unbelievable things that'll never happen again. But you got to at least give Belichick credit for drafting him, developing him, sticking with him when Bledsoe was healthy, and helping him turn him into the player that he became. I think the whole argument started to shift in 2007 when Belichick was under siege for Spygate, and Tom threw 50 touchdown passes and came within David Tyree's helmet of being 19-0. But that's where I think the whole balance of power in the New England situation changed, was in 2007. But the first few years, as we remember, it was a defensive dominated team, and Belichick was the guy behind the defense. So I think he gets the majority of the credit early on, but then the last 13 years, I think it was all Tom.
Yeah, and I think his hubris got maybe the best of him as he continued to have success. That's Belichick. But there's no question how many coaches would have had the balls to take a 6th-round pick and put him over a number 1 overall pick and keep him there.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.